Talk Back with Chris Hipkins on Kerre Woodham Mornings with pinnaclelife.co.nz. Easy online life insurance. Call 0800 80 1080. Newstalk ZB.
Newstalk ZB, a very good morning to you, 10:07. Kerre Woodham with you through until midday, and the Leader of the Opposition with us through until 11 o'clock, our second catch-up of the year. If you've got any questions for the Leader of the Opposition, text them through or call in 0800 80 1080. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I was hoping we'd start off on a very civilised front foot, but the comment you made that you don't want to see a whole lot of theatrics this morning as the country's COVID-19 response is scrutinised absolutely ground my gears. It sounds so dismissive. It's not. It sounds like you're lumping a whole lot of people in with Brian Tamaki and those sorts. I think when it's genuine passion and anger and sadness from a lot of people, and by saying, I don't want to see a whole lot of theatrics, you sound like a bunkered Wellington bureaucrat.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point. I don't think we want to see people like Brian Tamaki and Liz Gunn dominate the whole process. People are raising really legitimate points. And I think it's important that we get a good balanced view of people's responses to COVID, how they felt about that, and not let it be dominated by those who are making the most visible noise, the people like Brian Tamaki and Liz Gunn and so on. So I think that's the point that I was trying to make there. I think it's just important that everybody does get the chance to have their say and that some, voices aren't drowning out the others.
But by dismissing it as a whole lot of theatrics.
Well, I think if you look at what people like Brian Tamaki and Liz Gunn have been doing, it is theatrics.
They were representing, an extreme end of the spectrum, but there's still a lot of people who are genuinely angry and passionate about how long they were left by you.
I think one of
Jacinda.
And I think, one of the reasons I'm engaging very constructively with the Royal Commission, I've already spent several hours with the first Royal Commission and currently working through some written questions for the second one, is that, what we were trying to do during our COVID response was actually not have as many restrictions. So the restrictions that we put in place were designed to avoid having to have heavier restrictions. So if you look at the UK, for example, they started the pandemic response of saying...
But we were here. We're dealing with the here and now. We're quite a different case.
We are a different case, but it's a good comparison because they said we don't want to do lockdowns and so on, and they ended up doing more lockdowns than New Zealand did because they didn't put in place some restrictions that could have avoided that. So we were trying to avoid that, but it was damn hard. And I've never ever said that lockdowns weren't hard for people. They were very, very hard.
But you didn't know because you never came here. Nobody came.
Well, no, we were following the rules, of course.
No. You can always make exceptions to the rule as a leader of the country by coming here.
Well, I did go and visit the MIQs. I did go and visit the border. No. I did do those things. But I didn't come and go from Auckland at a time when we were telling people not to come and go from Auckland.
Even once. Like you yourself said, with the benefit of hindsight, you wouldn't have kept us locked down so long. But it's just... It makes me think, like, when we also see the emergency housing, when you were in Rotorua, and you said, we got bad advice on that. You had eyes. You couldn't possibly think that those motels were a good place for people to be in, or that they were full of people from Rotorua.
So no, that's exactly the point, Kerry, that last bit. That was the issue where I think the advice was bad. So we were being questioned on whether the people were from outside of Rotorua, and we got really clear advice from the agency saying, no, we're not accommodating people from outside of Rotorua. Now, there's plenty of evidence now to suggest that was happening.
There was plenty of evidence at the time.
And so, again, I think the advice was bad, and we didn't do a good enough job of scrutinising that advice and going and testing that ourselves. So I'll own that.
But you could, Tanya Tapsell was telling us, we all heard it and saw it, and you didn't. It's another example of being willfully blind. And then when you're called on it, you say, oh, yeah, we got bad advice. It's almost like if you admit you made a mistake, the whole house of cards comes tumbling down.
I said when I became Prime Minister that I didn't think, I was only Prime Minister for 8 months, that I didn't think the number of people in emergency accommodation in Rotorua was sustainable. We were taking steps to reduce the number of people in emergency accommodation in Rotorua, but we wanted to make sure that we were getting them into housing rather than just turning them out onto the streets.
Yeah, but you could have said, we stuffed up. Instead of all the time it's saying, we got poor advice.
Well, no.
And anything to do with COVID is, we got this
You're
advice.
taking one answer from quite a long interview. And in that interview, I did say that I didn't think that we had got it right when it came to emergency accommodation in Rotorua. The specific question was about people being accommodated from outside of Rotorua and why we had said at the time that that wasn't happening when it was. It was basically because that's the advice that we got. Now, I don't want that one answer to that one question to be taken as a response to the entirety of the issue, where I did say, actually, we didn't get this completely right.
I really do feel that it's almost as though you have to hold on to the belief that what you did was right all the way through. Your government, not just you.
Well, I don't agree. If you go back and you look at the daily press conferences I did during the pandemic, you'll find examples on a very regular basis of where I stood up in front of the whole country and said, actually, that didn't go according to plan. We didn't get that right. I tried as hard as I could during that time to admit when we got things wrong. Around testing in the early phase, we didn't get that right. And so I was trying to be as upfront with people as possible about that.
The vaccines.
On the vaccines was probably the hardest issue of almost all of the decisions that we took around COVID. Vaccines were undoubtedly the hardest.
And the mandates?
I accept the findings of the first Royal Commission. So the Royal Commission said that the mandates were too wide and stayed in place for too long, and I accept the findings of that Royal Commission.
Do you think Jacinda Ardern should come back? I mean, the COVID response defined your government. It defined her on the international stage. Shouldn't she be here for the inquiry?
I'm being cautious not to venture a comment on that, and it's not because I'm trying to avoid it. It's because a Royal Commission needs to operate independently. And I don't think me or David Seymour should be telling them who they should and shouldn't be calling to appear before them.
But isn't it the moral thing to do? Like, if it defines your government... The only reason you got back in was because of the COVID response.
And as I said, I'm not telling the Royal Commission who they should and shouldn't call or how they should conduct their hearings, and I don't think the government should be doing that either. The Commission needs to operate independently.
But it can't call people from overseas. It can only call people from within New Zealand.
Well, that's a question for the Commission. Ultimately, the way they operate, what they choose to do, is a question for the Commission.
But do you think that it would make sense for the person who was making the decisions based on the best advice that she was receiving, to be here to answer questions around the response?
Look, I'm not trying to dodge it because I'm trying to be cute. I just don't think it's appropriate for me to tell the Royal Commission or Jacinda Ardern how they should be approaching it. I think those are questions for them, not for me. I can answer questions on my own behalf, which I have done. I've already spoken to the Royal Commission for several hours when they were doing the first Royal Commission. They sent through a whole lot of questions late last week, which they've asked for written answers for. I'm working my way through those at the moment. So I'm trying to be as cooperative with them as possible. I'll answer questions on my own participation, but I think what they do around other people, those are really questions for them.
Do you think that there are concerns for Jacinda Ardern's safety coming back here?
I know, having spoken to Jacinda on a number of occasions, I think there are a small group of people who do threaten her safety, and we should be upfront about that. And they're not idle threats; these are serious threats to her safety and that of her family. And so, if she's weighing those things up, then I think that's a legitimate thing for her to think about when she's thinking about coming back to New Zealand and so on. So. I'm cautious to talk about those things because, of course, when they concern someone's personal security like that, I think we have to be careful in what we say about that. But we shouldn't be blind to the fact that they are real threats.
They are real.
They do exist, and these are not very nice people who are making those kind of threats.
Will you be attending in person?
At the moment, the Royal Commission have sort of changed their mind a couple of times on what they want. So we're still talking to them about what it is that they want from us. So that conversation's still happening.
Wouldn't you want to be there?
Again, I don't want to tell the Royal Commission how to conduct the inquiry. So what I can say, Kerre, is I'm trying to be as cooperative as possible with the Royal Commission.
So if they ask you to attend in person, you'll be there?
As I've said, those conversations are happening with the Royal Commission at the moment. And because they're conversations with the Royal Commission and because the Royal Commission operate under a protection of independence, I don't want to get into that because ultimately those are questions for them.
No, but if they ask you...
I've said that I'll cooperate with the Royal Commission.
All right. Newstalk ZB 1016.
The University of Canterbury has more than 100 postgraduate qualifications to help you achieve your goals and advance with purpose. Learn more at canterbury.ac.nz.
DVS huge winter sale on now. Huge savings across all DVS ventilation systems. Say no to crying windows. Say yes to the huge winter sale on now. DVS. T's and C's apply.
Lexus of Auckland is the home of excellence and a new level of luxury. You're invited to experience New Zealand's finest welcome at Lexus of Auckland, 21 Great South Road in Newmarket, the home of Auckland's premier Lexus dealership since 1990.
I'm just saying, at Petstock, the blue one, you get one everyday rewards point for every dollar you spend. So spend $50, you'll get 50 points.
Oh, nice boy maths.
Thanks.
Just saying.
Look out for their points boosters too.
I love those boosters.
And you can use the everyday rewards dollars you get shopping at Woolies at Petstock.
This is amazing. Watch my stuff. I'll be back.
Where are you off to?
To use my everyday rewards points on free Pete stuff.
But we're still on air.
I'm just saying. I'm off to Pete stock. You coming?
Yep, after the legal bit. Exclusions, T's and C's apply.
Thinking about using video to connect with your customers? We make it easy. Whether video's all totally new to you, you just want to shake things up, or you already have an idea you want to see come to life. Scripting, filming, editing, we've got you covered. Email vision@nzme.co.nz today and let's get video working for you. That's vision@nzme.co.nz. Proudly powered by New Zealand Media and Entertainment.
TradeDepot.co.nz.
Trade Depot brings you My Dear, the world's #1 smart home appliance brand. My Dear heat pump dryers just $5.99, and the matching My Dear 8 kg washing machines just $4.99. Shop online or in store at Trade Depot, Nielsen Street, Onehunga. With minimum spends, you can get free home delivery anywhere in Auckland. T's and C's apply.
TradeDepot.co.nz. Great care, Drake Care. They'll help you find the right care at Drake Meadows.
Drake Meadows is now recruiting a wide range of allied health and medical roles, including dentists, psychologists, anaesthetic technicians, speech pathologists, and more. So if you're a client wanting great staff or a candidate wanting work, call Drake Meadows today on 0800 633 699. Drake Meadows, connecting healthcare providers with exceptional talent for over 50 years.
Big stories, bigger perspective.
Should Jacinda Ardern return to the country and face the COVID inquiry music? I think yes.
I think she should. I could understand, though, if she doesn't, because just as she became the symbol of our successful response to the pandemic, she also then became the symbol of everything that we did wrong.
You'll remember when she announced the Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse in State Care, she said, this is a chance to confront our history and make sure we don't make the same mistakes again. And you could say the very same thing of the COVID inquiry.
Every view from every angle. Newstalk ZB.
Newstalk ZB 1019. I would like to know, says a texter, if Chris will form a coalition with Te Pāti Māori if he needs to after the next election. Well, you would have to, wouldn't you? It'd be Labour, Greens, Te Pāti Māori.
What I said last election, and I'll say the same thing again, is that well before the election, we'll set out, we could work with these parties on these issues in this way, and we couldn't work with these parties. You know, we'll set all that out before the election. There's still a lot of shifting ground. You know, it will depend on the policy positions that those parties say are their bottom lines, because if they take extreme positions that we can't work with, then we'll say that before the election. And so it is going to depend on what the parties say.
So would you be able to ring fence some of the more out there kind of policies and say, well, we're not going to discuss that, but we can work with you on confidence and supply? I
mean, I've already said for things like a separate parliament, a separate Māori parliament, for example, that's just not territory that we're willing to go into. So still a lot of water to flow under that particular bridge yet. Do we have things that we could work with the Greens and Te Pāti Māori on? Yes, we do. And we have done in the past. And bearing in mind the Māori Party spent 9 years in government under John Key with National.
Quite a different
Māori Party. But if you go back and if you look at Tariana Turia's positions between 2005 to 2008, before she formed the government with John Key, they're very similar to the positions that the Māori Party hold now. So I think, you know, lots can change. So we'll let the water flow under the bridge. So I'm not answering that yet, and it's not because I'm dodging it. It's because closer to the election we'll be in a better position to form a judgment on it.
But people have to understand too that anybody who votes for Labour will be getting the Ginsu knives the gift with purchase, which will be the Greens and Te Pāti Māori.
Well, the nature of MMP is you end up with coalitions. So on one side, you've kind of got ACT, at the extreme, and probably on the other side, the Māori Party would be more of the sort of on the other side. And then you've got parties like New Zealand First and the Greens, who are often more moderate on a range of issues. That's the nature of MMP. And of course, my goal between now and the election is to get the Labour Party vote as high as possible, because the higher the vote that I get for the Labour Party, the less you have to give away in post-election negotiations.
Why would people vote you back in? It's got to be more than just because you're not national and ACT.
Oh, absolutely. What I've said is that, as we head towards the election, we will set out quite clearly what we would do differently, what we do differently from this government, what we do differently from last time. I think, Kerre, one of the things, and I know people, people kind of struggle with this at this point in the electoral cycle, but one of the things I think New Zealanders are really cynical about, and fair enough too, is politicians making promises that they then change their minds on or that they don't keep. So I don't want to make a bunch of promises now without knowing that I can keep them when we form the government.
Which kind of makes me wonder why we're here. If we can't talk about policy or direction or how you will stimulate an economy to grow jobs, you can't just hire people as public servants and call that employment.
We can still talk about that at a high level. It's just if you want me to commit to specific, will you build X? We're not in a position to make that commitment now. But there are certainly things that we would do differently. So take building and construction. There's about 15,000 fewer people working in building and construction now than there were at the election. And one of the reasons for that is that the government stopped everything. They stopped state house builds, they stopped hospital rebuilds, they stopped school rebuilds, and so on.
They haven't stopped them. There was a review of the enormous amounts of money that were being spent on the school builds.
And what happened while the review was taking place? They stopped all of the work. And as a result, we've seen 15,000 fewer people working in that sector. Now, that's not the only thing. There was a slowdown in the private sector for building and construction as well. Yeah. But the government significantly contributed to that and made it worse by the decisions.
Are you going to blame them for the public servants in Wellington?
What I've said is that we won't do the same thing after the next election.
Well, do you blame National for the loss of jobs in the public service in Wellington?
We'd already said that we were going to be reducing public sector expenditure.
Yet, while you said please don't hire, please make, there was 2,000 odd people hired in the last 6 months of your term, which is economic vandalism.
Well, I don't agree. I mean, I think that kind of extremist language buys into the National Party's rhetoric. But if I think what we were trying to do as a government was make sure that we reduced some of the COVID era government spending in a way that was sustainable. Well, no, I don't think that's true either. If they were recruiting more people, it would often be in areas where they do need more people. This government have recruited more people in some areas as well.
We'll beg to differ. Newstalk ZB 1024.
When it comes to roof restoration, most companies don't have the guts to back themselves, but the Kōwhā guys do. Their roof restorations come with a 12-year warranty thanks to the quality products and coating systems they use and the expertise they bring to every job. In reality, they know your roof will perform a lot longer than 12 years. Find out more. Visit kōwhairoofs.co.nz.
Call the Kōwhai guys. Call the Kōwhai guys.
Be your own kind of beautiful with Farmers and look good, feel better. Buying a participating product from Farmers this month will not only help you feel good, but your purchase will also be supporting Look Good, Feel Better, the charity helping and connecting those in the community undergoing cancer treatment. The caring team provide free Feel Better community classes for any person facing any cancer at any time in their treatment. Support Look Good, Feel Better this month at Farmers.
Look, Papa, the ambulance is here for you.
Oh, I don't need one today, but if I had a medical emergency, I'd be sorted.
A St John Ambulance membership is the only way to pay for emergency care before you need it. It's more than an ambulance. It's 24/7 trusted medical advice, assistance and peace of mind when you need it most. Look after yourself with a whole year of care from Hātōhone St John. Just call 0800 785 646 today.
Today on Business Desk, Fletcher Building was underinsured, subbies on Sky City's International Convention Centre claim at trial. Alternative meat brand Plant has been rebooted by its founder, leaving more than $2 million in unpaid debt, including a government loan. and the Ministry of Education and its school lunch provider Compass have scrubbed recycling claims, investigative reporter Cecile Meyer reports. Business Desk, your deep dive into New Zealand business, the markets and the economy. Subscribe today at businessdesk.co.nz.
Finbase, focused on managing wealth with care. For wholesale and institutional investors. Finbase, invested in building wealth. Discover more at finbase.nz.
Land Rover only make icons. Defender, Discovery, Range Rover. And when Land Rover say Archibald and Shorter is New Zealand's best, you know it means something. Archibald and Shorter Land Rover in Green Lane, North Shore and at giltrap.com.
Talk back with Chris Hipkins on Kerre Woodham Mornings with pinnaclelife.co.nz. Easy online life insurance. Call 0800 80 1080. Newstalk ZB.
Well, yes, let's do Talk Back, Kerre. That'd be a good idea. That's why we're here. Philip, good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning.
Oh, can't hear you. Phone's dropped out. Okay, we'll have to try and get Philip back again. That was about oil and gas exploration. Somebody else asked about that. What about the gas exploration, the oil exploration? Would you still support no oil and gas exploration, or would you allow for some?
We'll set that out close to the election. I think this is being presented by the government as a cure to a problem that it isn't going to be a cure to. We haven't had a significant oil and gas find in New Zealand since 2001, I think was the last significant one. They've said they're going to spend $200 million on it. They could spend $200 million drilling more holes and have nothing to show for it at the end of it. You know, they still might not find any gas. So it's not going to solve our energy problems.
But is relying on the hope that electricity will the answer as well?
The issue with electricity is we haven't invested enough in new generation in New Zealand over the last decade and a half, and we've got to do better. We've got to fix that problem.
But in the meantime, what do we do?
Yeah, I don't think the electricity market's working the way that it should.
And what would you do?
Well, relying on fossil fuels is only going to continue to push the price up. We've got to get the market building much more renewable energy.
And they are.
And I think some of the changes we made in government have helped to contribute to that. But
while at the same time buying more coal than ever
we need
before.
to do significantly more. And coal is one of the coal and gas are one of the reasons we pay high power prices. So if we want lower power prices, it's got to be things like solar, wind, hydro. Geothermal is a great opportunity for New Zealand. So doing more of that is what will get our power prices lower.
Gary, quick one from you. Oh, there we go. Sorry, Gary.
Hi, that's all right. Hi, guys. Thanks, Chris, for taking my question. I'm heavily involved in the greyhound racing industry, and I want to know what your policy is going to be for next year. As you're probably aware, that they reckon that the industry is going to fold in July 26 next year, and I'd just like to know what your view on it is.
Yeah, thanks. Look, and I know you're probably not going to like my answer either. We do support the announcements that Winston Peters has made on the greyhound racing industry. We do think it's time for them to make this. I think they've given the industry a long lead time to prepare for that. So we wouldn't change the announcements that the government have made.
Thank you, Gary. And Ross, good morning.
G'day. Chris, do you get correspondence? Do you get to see all the correspondence sent to your office, or does someone in there decide, that's not important, we won't worry about that one?
No, there's a lot of it. Generally, I get a summary of the correspondence that's come through at the end of each week so that I know what people are saying and so on. But I try and read all of it, but there's a lot of it.
There we go. Thank you very much. That answers that. 0800 80 1080. It's 10:30.
Newstalk ZB Auckland. Time saver traffic.
Armstrong's Drive now no repayments till 2026. Now to New Windsor, Dallas Place at New Windsor Road. Reports of a crash. If you can update us, 0800 jammed. The northern slow at Upper Harbour, moderate from Esmond. The southern flowing well, no delays on the northwestern or the southwestern. Armstrong's Drive now no repayments till next year on selected used cars. Conditions apply. Time saver traffic.
Welcome to Vet Posts with Dr. Bex.
Arthritis in dogs can be progressive and painful, but with proactive care, we can dramatically improve quality of life and even extend lifespan. Here's a tip. Avoid high-impact activities like fetch or jumping. Instead, go for controlled leash walks. Even give hydrotherapy a go.
Visit VetPost online for affordable, vet-recommended products and expert advice from Dr. Bex and the qualified team. vetpost.co.nz.
Over chopping and stacking wood? Worried your gas supply is coming to an end? The future of fire is here at Naked Flame in a new form of cosy this winter. Whether it's indoors or outdoors, suspended or in the wall, Naked Flame are sure to have a fireplace solution for you. Stay warm outside or inside this winter. Real fire, real heat, real simple. Naked Flame, your fireplace specialist. Barry's Point Road, Takapuna, or visit nakedflame.nz.
Tori and Ben didn't think they needed a DVS system.
We've got double glazing.
Have you still got that cold, damp feeling? Yeah, we do. So Tori and Ben got DVS home ventilation, and its fresh air in, stale air out technology went to work, making their rooms drier and healthier. Say no to that cold, damp feeling. Say yes to DVS. Your healthy home isn't complete without it.
The heart of a healthy home, DVS.
When Highgrove Village and Patrick Ferry House say you're always part of the family, they mean it. As a family-owned and run boutique village with on-site aged care hospital, residents say they choose Highgrove because of the friendly, warm atmosphere. Plus the wide range of amenities, including the on-site hospital, Patrick Ferry House. Thrive in a community with a real sense of family. Take a tour. For more information, visit highgrove.co.nz.
Newstalk ZB headlines.
With Blue Bubble taxis, it's no trouble with a blue bubble. Chris Hipkins won't commit to appearing at the second phase of the inquiry into New Zealand's COVID response, focusing on its lockdown and vaccine mandates. He says the terms of reference seem constructed to give a platform to those with conspiracy theories. Next steps aren't yet clear for Australian triple murderer Erin Patterson, who was ruled guilty yesterday of murdering 3 people with a toxic mushroom lunch and attempting to kill another. Her lawyers will need to decide whether to appeal her conviction or sentence, or both. A former national security advisor to Donald Trump says the Iran-Israel ceasefire was a mistake because Iran's nuclear program can still recover. Health New Zealand Commissioner Lester Levy will stay on for a year as chair as it reverts to having a board from July 23, which will also have an overseeing Crown observer. Iwi-owned commercial entities have outperformed some of New Zealand's largest listed companies during the economic downturn. And no major damage is being reported from a magnitude 6 quake overnight offshore from Southland, well south of Stewart Island. Family claims dogs shot and possibly used as bait in alleged dogfighting ring. Find out more on that story at NZ Herald Premium. Back to Kerre Woodham.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. It is 25 minutes to 11. 0800 80 10 80 if you want to put a question to the Leader of the Opposition. I have some. You got brassed off with Nick Mills the other day, saying that we've got a whole bunch of Tory owners. We want National to look good at NZB. That's not strictly true.
Oh, look, you're not all Tories, Kerry. I haven't given up all hope on you just yet. You know, you never know.
That's the thing. I will vote Labour if there's a reason to vote Labour. Absolutely. There's a lot of voters like that.
Look, I mean, the conversation we were having was around ram raids, and I think the point that I was making there was in 2022 we hit that peak of ram raids. It was terrible. It was having a huge impact on people and businesses. I became Minister of Police right in the heat of it. We did a whole lot of changes that were designed to deal with ram raiding at the root cause, so deal with these kids who were getting into trouble. And it started to work pretty quickly. We got a 30% reduction within 6 months. We then had another reduction through 2023 and another reduction through 2024. And it was dealing with the issue at its root cause rather than dealing with the consequences afterwards. And I think on law and order, we should have more of those conversations. How do you deal with this stuff at its root cause? Stop it happening in the first place. So you have fewer victims and you have fewer people needing to be sentenced because you're actually stopping the offending happening in the first place.
I quite agree.
And I think the ram raiding thing is a good example of that you can do it and it can work because we went into these kids' families effectively and we said, what on earth is going on here that these kids are out and about in the middle of the night stealing cars and driving them into dairies? And by doing that, we managed to really turn down the volume.
I quite agree. And there was an overarching body of organisations that looked after them, the police, school, truancy, Who was that? The social welfare workers?
Yeah, so we got everyone together.
That's
so
right.
I got them
what
all.
was the name of that organisation?
Oh, we called it the Circuit Breaker Initiative, but it was just getting them all around the table. So every time a kid was getting into trouble.
Is that still going on?
Yes, I think it is.
Yeah, I think they did see the merit in that.
Yeah, and it was getting all around the table because it was really interesting. The first couple of times we did it, everyone sort of looks at their hands and shuffles awkwardly, but it turned out we knew a lot about these kids.
Yeah, and the families.
And when we started to join all the dots, we could actually solve the problem.
But then once you've got people who do commit crime, allowing a 77% discount for a knife-wielding rapist, giving him 2 years in jail, that's not acceptable. As a woman, as a member of society, that's not cool.
Yeah, we haven't formed our party position on that. So these were announcements that were made over the recess, and Parliament hasn't been sitting, so our team hasn't met to consider what we're going to, what our stance on those things is going to be. Obviously, you will have heard my first kind of port of call in all these debates is to say, how do we stop this stuff happening in the first place?
Yep.
But
I
also accept that there's a need for us to make sure that there are consequences for offending. And so,
which is a shift in ideology from where you were last time.
So we will look at, yes and no.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at youth offending again, one of the problems there was that young people not being charged, which was actually a requirement of the Oranga Tamariki legislation introduced by the previous national government, it had meant that kids not being charged meant that they weren't actually getting any help. Because if you didn't charge them, it was like catch and release, effectively. Yeah. And so I actually, as Minister of Police and then as Prime Minister, was trying to change that so that these kids could come before the youth court. Not because I wanted to have them locked up, but because I wanted them to actually get some help so that we could stop them falling into this cycle of offending. Some of these kids were 12 years old. I don't want to lock them up. I want to get them back on the straight and narrow. I want to get them back into school. I want to get them
I don't think they were ever on the straight and narrow. You want to help them discover a straight and narrow.
Well, that's a good point.
When their families are using them because they know that the kids won't get charged.
And that was one of the devastating numbers when I did have that meeting around ram raids and I said, tell me about these kids. Something like 90% of them had a parent who was otherwise involved in the criminal justice system.
And domestic violence.
So domestic violence, I think that 80 to 90% number applies to just about all of those metrics, whether they've got a parent in prison, whether they've been the victims themselves of family violence or witnesses to family violence. Those kids are so disproportionately represented in those stats. So that's where we start. Tackles that, and you'll end up with a lot fewer of them needing to end up in the court.
I don't want to see a drink driver who takes out the life of a young woman get 12 months home detention.
Yeah, and nor do I.
It's unacceptable. So how much of a dumpster fire are you going to do where if you and the Greens and Te Pāti Māori form a coalition government next time round, how much of a dumpster fire on the legislation will you do? Not
a lot. I certainly don't want to do what this government have done and spend the first 18 months just undoing everything the previous government did. I think there's been too much flip-flopping around on this stuff. One of the areas in law and order that I do want to focus on, though, is courts, because it's taking far too long to get issues seen to by the courts. Victims get re-traumatised by having these cases drag on for years in some cases. We've got to deal with the inefficiencies in the system, and that starts with the police and the way they file their paperwork and do all that stuff through to the courts. Because I agree with the sentiment that justice delayed is justice denied, and it's taking way too long for many of these issues. We're getting people now who are being released on sentencing because they've spent all of their sentence on remand waiting to be tried. That's ridiculous. We've got to fix that, and I want to make that a priority.
All right. That is good to hear. The fiscal whole unit, you actually support that too, because that was a Greens, then a Labour, then a National, and then ACT and New Zealand First shot it down.
Yeah, look, I think it's a good idea.
So do I.
It would take some of the heat out of these issues. We could actually argue about the substance of policies rather than, whether we've got our costings right. We could actually argue about the merits of doing something rather than whether it's going to cost X or Y. I think that would be a good thing. I've written to Christopher Luxon and I've said, don't let the small parties veto this. Labour and National actually agree on it. Let's sit down and we'll give you the numbers. We'll give you the majority in Parliament to do it and to come up with something sensible.
That would be because I heard, who was it who was explaining what went on, that the sitting government will obfuscate and obstruct and block while the opposition parties try and get the information. And they said, I think this might have been Stephen Joyce, they see it as a bit of a game. And that I know my gears get ground quite often, but that really racked me up too. It's not a bloody game.
Yeah.
That is time and money that is being spent that could be in the service of the taxpayer.
I totally agree with you. We tried to set up this costings unit when we were in government, and the National Party said no. I don't think you can set it up without at least the two major parties agreeing on it, because then it would become a political football. But I think if Labour and National could sit down and agree, look, we both think this is a good idea now, let's figure out a way to do it that we can both sign up to and agree, I think that would be a really good thing for the country.
Same. Newstalk ZB 19 to 11.
Every decision, moment and encounter has shaped who I am today. Davida provides home care with respect for who I am, empowering me to live life with confidence, connection and choice in the comfort of my own home.
For person-centred home care, start with a conversation. Contact Davida for a free, no-obligation care consultation. Search Davida today. That's D-O-V-I-D-A. Davida.
Your life, your way.
Experience your One New Zealand Warriors like never before as they take on the high-flying Bulldogs in Sydney on August 9th. The Warriors Travel and Experiences program has launched, and we've curated a special travel package including 4-star accommodation, match tickets and a core stadium tour the night before the game, and the opportunity to be hosted by Warriors legends Arwen Gutenbiel and Kevin Campion. Share this unique Warriors experience with like-minded fans and business people alike. Simply head to warriorstravelandexperiences.kiwi to book.
Do you know why so many of your neighbours are installing a shower dome shower top? Just watch the demo video at showerdome.co.nz. You'll see how a shower dome stops bathroom condensation, stops mould and mildew, and keeps your home dry and healthy. The best thing you can do for your home is install a shower dome. Available now from your local plumbing store.
Showerdome.co.nz.
When Mary got her new wardrobe from the wardrobe company, she was delighted. It was so good, she told 2 friends about it. And they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends. Get a wardrobe from the wardrobe company and you'll tell your friends about it. And they'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends. The Wardrobe Company, always happy to take another referral. Book your free consultation at thewardrobecompany.co.nz.
Nobody gets excited about dishwashers.
So the latest Fisher & Paykel dish drawer goes under the bench with hidden handles, so you won't even know it's there.
With 6 wash programs and flexible racking, so it fits your weird collection of oversized serving platters.
It even has Wi-Fi control from your phone.
Because nothing says I am an adult like remote starting your dishwasher from your bed.
Our price this week to $2,099.
And you get $100 cash back.
100% Magnus Benro.
Dishing up the savings this week.
Chris Hipkins taking your calls on 0800 80 1080 on Kerre Woodham Mornings with Pinnacle Life. Get a life insurance quote in just 30 seconds. Newstalk ZB.
And Neil, a very good morning to you. You have a question around education?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. As a government transitioned into new government recently, it appeared that Erica Stanford was working really closely with Jan Taniti and seemed to have a good working relationship. It doesn't appear that that's the same now with Willow Jean. And as a sector, I think we'd be a little bit frustrated and quite exhausted if we had another massive change without some alignment between the two major parties around education. We find Erica really good at getting out and talking to people and explaining what's going on, and had said that her and Jan and the Labour Party had agreed on the vast majority of things. There's a few differences on the fringes, but the direction for education was looking pretty straight and good for the next few years. Just concerned that there's not that level of engagement anymore.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really fair question. In my first term as Minister of Education, I tried really hard to work with Nikki Kay, who was my predecessor in education. I found her great to deal with. And I tried to say, and there's going to be areas of disagreement around, new school buildings and so on, but let's try and make things like curriculum and assessment not political footballs, because what kids learn and how they're assessed actually should be based on evidence. It should be based on some long-term thinking, not become a political football. Paul Paul Goldsmith, unfortunately, didn't want to continue in that vein when he took over from Nikki Kaye. But
now we've got Erica Stanford, who is a motivated, passionate advocate for our children's education.
And my offer as the leader of the opposition is always, and leader of the Labour Party, as long as I'm the leader of the Labour Party, on those issues around curriculum and assessment, I really don't ever want to see those becoming political footballs again in the way that they were when we had things like national standards. Let's just try and do things that are based on evidence and based on the best interests of the kids.
The kids were failing. Our kids were failing. And we used to have world-class education.
That's right. And things like national standards, though, actually made it worse, not better.
But now we've got, like, the kids are bringing homework home, and you must see it too with your kids. Like, it makes sense. The kind of workbooks that they're getting and the teaching that's being taught.
The challenge there, Kerre, is we don't know that, because you never know in education, often for 5-10 years later, whether a change you've made now is going to work,
because we were going down the
there's no question a change had to happen, but you've got to make those decisions based on research and evidence.
Well, what worked before?
So one of the changes I made to the NCEA, for example, which still hasn't been fully implemented, was a change around the literacy and numeracy requirements, because kids were getting the NCEA, and yet the universities, their employers and stuff were saying they still can't do basic reading and writing and maths. So we changed that, and that still hasn't been fully implemented yet. But I know the current government are continuing that work forward, and I think that's a good thing.
Can you ask Neil's question, though? Why does there not, and this is from somebody clearly within the sector, why is there not a good working relationship?
Well, I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think there is. I think on issues that where the government work with us, we'll work with them. So if there has been any shift, it will be because the government have chosen not to talk to us.
Really? On education? Okay. Have you decided on capital gains tax yet?
We'll have a tax policy. I've said that we'll do it this half of the year. So we're working through the details of that at the moment.
When will you be ready? I mean, I know it's working for you as a party to just sit there and have everyone get frustrated with National and the coalition government. It is working because the economy's stalling and it's not picking up as quickly as had been promised.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I would like to say it's all part of a master political strategy, but the reality is actually a bit more simple than that.
You don't have policy?
No, the economy is changing so much at the moment that I don't want to promise things and then turn around, next year and say, either we've undercooked that and we're going to need to do more than that, or we can't afford to do that anymore. So I don't want to do...
But your ideology can be stated, like co-governance. Is that still something you hold very strongly to?
I've already said that on the issue around co-governance, I don't think that we explained what we were doing there, and I think that became such a distraction from a really important issue, which was around the fact that water needs to be fixed, and it's going to cost money, and we should do that in the most efficient way possible. The current government aren't doing it in the most efficient way possible. It's costing more, and you see that in your rates bill. But I think co-governance became a distraction from doing the right thing.
Would the rates bill have come down had Labor been able to put in its...
No, it still would have gone up, but it wouldn't have gone up by as much. So, hand on heart, we got those numbers. It said, if you do this reform, you'll get this rates increase. If you don't do it, you'll get this rates increase. The rates increase we're getting now is at the extreme end because they haven't done things that they could have done to lower the rates increase. But hand on heart, I can't say rates wouldn't have increased. They still would have increased, but not by as much.
Do you think that your party understands that to have a productive economy, you need to have business? Thank God for our farmers who were vilified or felt as though they were being vilified by your previous administration. Do you understand that business is not the enemy?
Oh, absolutely. And we kept businesses in business during our time in government.
Who are now paying through the nose for that decision.
You've had
that went on way longer
record
than it
numbers of company liquidations in the last year. And that's just in the last year.
Yes, because they're playing catch up.
Well, I don't think that's true.
Well, that's what the experts said. They were seeing the wash up.
The biggest increase in company liquidations in the last year has been building and construction firms.
Yeah, because they haven't got a pipeline of work.
Because the government stopped it.
No, that's when we talk about private contractors as well. That's not true. People don't have confidence. They're shattered.
Yeah, but the government withdrawing all of its investment in that area has added to that lack of confidence.
Of it. They were looking at whether they were getting value for money from what you were promising. I was talking to the lovely, they're all nice people, the CEO of Kāinga Ora, And he said it's actually quite simple, the job that we have to do. It's to house people, as many people as we can, in warm, dry, safe homes. And he said where it gets complicated is where you're tasked to do other things like housing developments. He said he wouldn't criticise his predecessor because he said he had a different job to the one I have.
Yeah, I think we have to recognise that under existing state houses, there's a lot of land that gives us a lot of potential for redevelopment to build more houses. Not always just all state houses either.
No,
they can be
that's
mixed
right.
developments too. But someone needs to do that work. I think...
Is the government the people who should do it?
Ultimately, if the government owns the land, then yes, we should be involved in that. But should Kāinga Ora do both? I think that's a legitimate question that we'll probably have a different answer on next time to the one that we had last time.
Right, so last time you thought that was all part of Kāinga Ora's brief and it was just buy up as much as you possibly could and have this gorgeous utopian village of mixed model housing.
Yeah, I think
it hasn't quite worked.
No, I mean, I think one of the things I've been thinking about this quite a bit, where government hasn't worked, and it's not just that it hasn't worked under us, it didn't work under previous governments as well. I think the public service has become a bit too convoluted and some of the clarity of the mission that we're giving to different government agencies has disappeared. Kāinga Ora was a good example of that. So you're right. The biggest job is to rent houses to people. Giving them a development thing on top of that distracts them from that job. Would it be better to give it to a separate agency that was focused just on the developments? That's a question which I think we should ask ourselves. And I think you could ask that of any number of different government agencies. MBIE's a good example. They've got so many different things that MBIE's asked to do now. I think we've lost some of the clarity of what we're asking these agencies to do.
All right, Newstalk ZB, it is 7 to 11.
Precision engineering, rigorous testing, and top-notch build quality. JCB produce the gold standard of construction and agricultural equipment. And Power Farming is your home of JCB in New Zealand. Your locally owned and operated dealer can access over $70 million worth of parts held in New Zealand. And with 21 dealerships from Whangarei to Invercargill, there's one near you. Search JCB NZ or pop into your local Power Farming. JCB, good as gold.
Thinking about selling your home this winter? You might be wondering if now's the right time. Well, here's something interesting. Winter can actually be a fantastic time to sell, especially when you've got the right team behind you. Barfoot & Thompson has more than 1,800 salespeople across 88 branches, each with their own local connections and buyer relationships. And because they work as one team, every agent has access to your listing, which means any one of them from anywhere can introduce the right buyer to your home. More eyes on your property means more interest. More interest often leads to a result you can feel confident about. Why limit your home's exposure when you could have Auckland's largest real estate network working for you? Book an appraisal at your local Barfoot & Thompson branch today. With more than 1,800 salespeople across 88 branches, there's one near you. Barfoot & Thompson, licensed under the REAA 2008.
Scott Barrett, famed for leading the team, doing the hard yards and making the calls. Right, Scott?
If you reckon.
So when the power goes out every year, what's the state of play, Captain?
Power shortages aren't going to go away, obviously.
And what's the call, Scott?
Solar power with Lightforce Solar, obviously.
Really?
It's pretty obvious.
Great leadership, Scott.
It is pretty obvious, though.
Visit lightforce.co.nz today. Lightforce Solar. The future is obvious.
Wait for it. Okay, start.
Sweet.
We're back again, this time with Jay, who's getting a quote for life cover at pinnaclelife.co.nz.
Oh, this is pretty easy, eh? Male, non-smoker, 42 years. And there's the quote. $350,000 cover for $33.15 a month. Okay, looks like I can also add on other cover options like income protection or critical illness. Easy.
There you go, a life insurance quote from Pinnacle Life in less time than this ad. Nice. pinnaclelife.co.nz.
Well, there we go. This guy's so full of deflection, it's not funny. Something, it didn't work, it's been shown with Kiwi Build. Now we'll change things from what we did. Sorry, dude, it's being changed and for the better. Great for you to have a guest on your show who, despite intense questioning, didn't present Luxon word salad answers. Hipkins for Prime Minister.
Oh, there you go. There's one Labour listener today, Kerre. So things are looking up.
I love diversity of opinion. You know, most of my friendship group votes across the spectrum. You know, it is a It is a political spectrum of friends. And
But
that's
isn't
the way
that
it
a
should
great
be.
thing? And isn't it sad that more and more people aren't living that way anymore? More and more people are just living in groups of people that they agree with.
Yeah.
And I think if you want to live a good, healthy, happy life, have lots of people in your life who have a different view of the world to you. I think it's healthy.
I'd agree.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. Anyway, we will leave with your song. Thank you for coming in. Be good to get some policy next time, though. Otherwise, it's just you and me kind of chatting.
I'll see what I can do, Kerry. I'll see what I can do.
Okay. Now, the clean. Anything can happen. Why? Does this take you back to young and free?
Takes me back to being young and free. Anything could happen. Yeah. And, I work in politics. Anything can happen.
Yeah, it was a time, wasn't it? We live in interesting times now. All right, Leader of the Opposition, otherwise known as my 6-year-old granddaughter said, is he the other guy who's not the Christopher who's the Prime Minister? I said he exactly is. That's
a very good description at the moment.
Newstalk ZB, it is 2:11.